As I start to wind down my 2023 movie reviews, there are a few celebrity documentaries left to tackle, and we cover all sorts of ground here from musicians to sports figures to comedians. Let's talk about 2023 celebrity documentaries. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my celebrity documentary roundup. This is number 3, so you can check out the other ones I've done this year on subjects like Mary Tyler Moore and Wham and Judy Blume and Jason Kelsey. There's been a whole bunch this year, and it all started with a standalone video I did for the Michael J. Fox documentary Still, which I thought was a really good movie, and it made me realize, the year before I hadn't watched any documentaries, celebrity or otherwise. And so at the end of the year here, they released a few more, and then there was one from earlier in the year that I had missed, but it ended up on one of the Entertainment Weekly writers' top 10 lists for the whole year, not just for documentaries, and that is about Little Richard. So I figured, well, you know what, I better check that out if it's that good. So we're going to talk about movies featuring Jon Batiste, Barry Sanders, which, I'm not a sports guy, so this was kind of news to me. You have Albert Brooks and then Little Richard. We're going to do that in that order, sort of going from most recent release to the oldest. So before I launch into it, though, let me thank you for finding this video here on Dan Reviews It. Please consider subscribing, hit that notification bell, hit the like button, comment below. All that stuff is great for the channel, and I do appreciate it. All right, so let's dive into it. American Symphony is first. That was the most recently released about a month ago. This is a Netflix exclusive, so you can find it there. And this is about the musician Jon Batiste. Not just about him, but it's basically sort of a year in the life, which also covers his wife's struggle with her cancer returning from years and years earlier. So that is all a part of the mix as well. This was written and directed and edited by Matthew Heineman, who I was unfamiliar with, but he actually has some Oscar roots. He was nominated for Cartel Land a few years ago, and he's won 3 Primetime Emmy Awards as well, I assume, in some sort of documentary fashion. And this is sort of on some of the short lists that I've seen for nominations at this year's Oscars. Which is a surprise to me because, a brief spoiler for my review, I think this is the worst of the 4, to be honest. So it's intriguing to me that this is being considered for possible nomination. However, it was produced by Barack and Michelle Obama's company, so that, may have some weight with the Oscar crew, with people voting. I don't know, but anyway, this takes, like I said, a year in the life of Jon Batiste, the famous musician who led the band on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he won Album of the Year. Was that 2 years ago now, I think, at the Grammy Awards. And he is working in this film on a new symphony. He's trying to compose something meaningful that will last for generations. But amidst all that, like I said, his wife is struggling with leukemia, so that obviously features as well. Okay, so the reason that this is my least favorite of the 4 is that it's very interesting. And look, there's no doubt Jon Batiste is super talented. I was, kind of vaguely familiar with him on the sidelines. Like when he won the Grammy, I had kind of heard of him. I don't watch The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, so I guess maybe I knew just from reading about it that he was the band leader. But then when I saw the Grammy Award nominations, I was like, okay, this guy, what's his deal? He was nominated in classical categories and jazz categories and pop categories. So obviously really running the gamut of styles. So look, there's no doubt the dude is talented, and I'm certainly not going to take away from that. But this documentary seems very, I guess, pun intended, orchestrated. It really seems like this is a very polished documentary. It's not really giving us, not that I want to see like a bunch of dirt on Jon Batiste or anything, but it just, for something that is so musical, and we're looking for this new great symphony or whatever, this just didn't have a lot of soul for me. And I think maybe it would have if it focused more on his home life than his career. Obviously the career is the highlights. This is the biggest year in his career ever. Winning album of the year. I mean, that's huge. Only 60 or 70 people or bands have been able to do that. So obviously that's huge. But I think this documentary would have been better served if we focused a little bit more on the rest of his life, not just his professional career. Because one of the best moments of the movie to me was his wife watching the Grammys, sick at home, and cheering him on and all of that. Not that I also need to have it completely focused on the wife and her struggles, but I think a better balance was needed for this. It ends up being okay, here is the highlight reel of this amazing year in Jon Batiste's life. And oh, by the way, his wife also has cancer, so we're struggling with that a little bit. But back to the music, back to the symphony, back to the Stephen Colbert. To me, it rang a little hollow. But it was great to see the man, doing what he does best, putting together this orchestra, which is something he had not necessarily tried before, and sort of, the basis of that, or, focus it entirely on that. Focus entirely on making a symphony, because it doesn't really do that. It focuses on a year in the life as opposed to, just these couple of portions that I think might have been more interesting than just a year-long overview of, okay, this is what happened in this amazing year of Jon Batiste. So I leave American Symphony with a B minus. I am surprised that this is on the Oscar shortlist. We will see what happens in a few weeks when the nominations are announced. But for me, of all the ones I've seen this year, this is among the weaker ones. All right, so let's move next to Bye Bye Barry. This is an Amazon Prime exclusive, and the reason I'm including it, look, like I said, I'm not a sports guy, but this broke records for most watched Amazon Prime documentary ever, and so I thought, okay, well, that's certainly intriguing. I've heard of Barry Sanders, of course. I don't have my head in the dirt that much, but I've never seen him play. I couldn't have told you what team he was on before this, but we see that he. What was intriguing about this is that there was this sort of mystery of he left the game at almost maybe the height of his career, or at the very least, a potential record-breaking season was ahead of him. He was close to breaking a bunch of records. He had already broken a bunch of records, but he was headed to break a few more, and decided on the eve of training day to just pack it up and walk away. And so I thought, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Let's find out what this is about. Unfortunately, very, very little of this documentary covers that. He talks a little bit about it, and kind of the end of the doc is about, those moments and what was going through his head and all of that. But the rest of the documentary is a highlight reel on basically the life and career of Barry Sanders. But you know what? That's not a bad thing, because sports fans, I think, will really enjoy kind of reliving a lot of these big moments in Detroit Lions history and Barry Sanders history. And for me, who knows nothing, it was, kind of a nice overview of, okay, here's why this guy was important to the game. Here's why this guy is an important figure in sports history. Here are the records that he broke, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this movie works on both levels, and we see some interviews with famous Detroit Lions fans, including Eminem and Jeff Daniels, and Tim Allen. I didn't realize he was from Detroit. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's just a fan of the team. But in any event, he is here a little bit as well, but mostly Eminem and Jeff Daniels. And then we hear a lot from Barry himself. He's really telling his own story here. So this one was, I always like to talk about in a documentary who directed it. It was Mark McCormack, I believe. I don't know him from anything, so I don't know if he's done other sports things or whatever. But the most compelling part of the documentary for me, and again, I wish maybe they had done more of this, is towards the end when they're really getting into, okay, why did you leave? What was going through your head, et cetera, et cetera. there's like a round table with his family, and his kids are basically interviewing him, who are now, grown mostly, interviewing him and asking him, Dad, what was it like? And what I wish the whole documentary was that. A lot of it is Barry just kind of, in a room talking to a camera, whatever. But I would have loved to have seen the whole documentary be about sort of the family kind of interviewing him, and getting their reactions to things that he was saying, because I thought that part was really really interesting at the end. I love sort of that dynamic of, the kids interviewing the parents, because it's something I've wanted to do, for about a decade with my parents as they're getting up there in years. You want to kind of interview them about their life and different aspects. So I would have loved to have had his children be the main interviewers here. I think that part was really really compelling, but the rest of this is compelling as well. Like I said, I think if you're a sports fan, it will be great to see, relive those old moments, and for a non-sports fan like myself, it's interesting to see why this person was so important to the game. So I leave Bye Bye Barry with a B plus. All right, so up next, we're going to talk about Albert Brooks and his movie Defending My Life. And this is what I love about the title, is it's based on one of my top 50 movies of all time, Defending My Life. What is it? Defending Your Life, with him and Meryl Streep, and he wrote it, and it's being talked about a little bit in this movie. But this is Albert Brooks Defending My Life, and it is again an overview of his entire career. But not only that, it's talks about his parents' career. They were both showbiz people. He talks about his dad's interesting death, and this is all framed around Rob Reiner interviewing him. So Reiner directed it, but not only that, these guys have been friends for 60 years. They went to school together, and because they were both kids of famous people. Rob Reiner is the son of Carl Reiner, which I'm not sure if I ever knew before this documentary. I don't know why I didn't put that together. But and then Albert Brooks, which I didn't know, his dad was a famous comedian back in the 40s and 50s, and in the Friars Club days and all of that. So they went to this school for kind of famous people, and we learned from this documentary that his given name was Albert Einstein, which is kind of crazy, and he renamed himself Brooks. But this is a great overview of a legendary career. Albert Brooks is one of those people that everybody knows from one thing or another, whether it is as Marlin in Finding Nemo, the father, whether it's his voice work on The Simpsons, whether it's from his old Saturday Night Live vignettes and videos from the 70s. And I learned that he is the reason Saturday Night Live has guest hosts every week. They wanted him to actually be the host of SNL, like permanent. And he was like, "Nah, why don't you do a rotating cast of hosts, and every week you can have a new person host." And he was the one who came up with that. Like, that's crazy. So this, for me, as a comedy fan, as a fan of Albert Brooks, and as somebody who I think, and I haven't seen all of his movies for sure. There's many that I've missed that this movie makes me want to watch, but I definitely think he is an underrated, really comedic genius level talent that does not get the due he reserves. And part of that is because he's sort of lived his life out on the edges of what is popular. He sort of does his own thing. Before Andy Kaufman, before Robin Williams, he was doing these really bizarre things on the Tonight Show, which thankfully, because of the magic of television, we have a lot of those clips saved that we see in this movie. So yes, I'm very very enthusiastic about this movie. It's not an A for me though, and I'll tell you why. It is again a little bit too polished, a little bit structured, and as great as it is to see all of the different talking heads in this movie, you have Sarah Silverman, Conan O'Brien, any comedian, Jon Stewart, so many comedians from the last, 30, 40 years waxing nostalgic and happy about Albert Brooks. They're all basically saying the same thing. And it's, the stuff I've just said in the last couple of minutes, like, what a talent, what a genius, what a comedian. It was interesting when one of them would say, "Oh, I remember this bit he did on The Tonight Show, or on, whatever, Letterman or whatever show." And then they find the clip and then play us the clip so we can see it. That part was cool. But how many times can you hear, a famous comedian saying, Albert Brooks was great. He was so funny. Da, 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 da. We got it. Um, so that part. But I like again, the interview aspect of somebody that has known this man for 60 years, kind of going down memory lane with him as Rob Reiner did. I loved that part of this. So I leave Albert Brooks Defending My Life with an A minus. And finally, we have the one from earlier this year that I missed. That landed on, I forget if it was Ken Tucker, but it was one of the Entertainment Weekly reviewers. This is in his top 10 films of 2023, not just docs, but films overall. I don't quite have it that high, but I thought, well, that's certainly going to be intriguing then. It's Little Richard, I Am Everything. And this was, I believe, an HBO Max original film. This came out earlier this year, but you can, I think it was an original, but in any event, you can catch it now on Max. And this was directed by Lisa Cortez, who I'm unfamiliar with. And this basically is all about Little Richard and his life and his turmoils. And a lot of things I, didn't know. I mean, I came into or he came into my world, I should say, in the 80s, obviously, when, I was growing up, long after his, huge hit success records in the 50s and 60s, and after his, gospel phase and returning then to sort of the pop songs and all of that. So back in, my day in the 80s, he was already, I don't want to say, on the way down in his career, but I mean, the pop songs weren't coming his way. Let's just say that. But he had become such a national treasured figure at that point. He was more like, okay, everyone knew who Little Richard was. Everyone knew Good Golly Miss Molly and Tutti Frutti and all of that. So this was very interesting to see his upbringing. One thing I didn't realize though, and this was interesting to me as a gay man, that he actually was out in back in the day in the 50s and 60s. People knew he was a queer entertainer, and for me that was that was new information. Like, to me, he always was sort of like a Richard Simmons, where it's like, okay, we all know that he's this way, but it's just not talked about. Nobody says it. He's never confirmed or denied, like that kind of thing. But no, Little Richard apparently, back in the day, was very open about his queerness, and I was blown away by that. And it was interesting to see then in, the middle of his life, in, I guess it was maybe the 70s, he had sort of shied away from that and gone way the other direction and started doing gospel records and, all of this stuff, and had found the church and everything. And then, later on sort of found a nice, middle ground between the two, being able to be himself, but also, having religion as a strong focal point. And I really appreciated that too. So this was a very interesting look at this man. And you forget, kind of how many hit records he had, and how many songs we know today still, that were either written by him or at the very least performed by him. But a lot of this stuff he wrote, and then of course, white guys like Pat Boone took it and made big hit records out of it, because that's what they did in the 50s and 60s. You could, 50s specifically, but it was hard, to get a black record on to a top 40 radio station, and we've seen this in, movies like Dreamgirls and, a lot of other things, but that was real, and it's horrible. But of course, the legacy of those records is we remember them by the original black artists today. Like Tutti Frutti. I would never have associated that with Pat Boone in my life. I don't even know if I knew he had a hit record with it, to be honest. So anyway, this was very, very interesting as well. Really, really great to see this overview of really what a talented man. So yes, this does rank for me among the top documentaries I have seen this year. I'm not sure if it beats the Judy Blume one. That was pretty great. But it doesn't make my top 10, I don't think, of the year, but it's definitely up there in my top documentaries for 2023 for sure. I leave Little Richard, I Am Everything with an A. All right, so 4 new documentaries for you to check out, should you so desire, and check out my other celebrity doc videos. I'll put the links to them in the description here. So you can check those out as well. And if you want to click on the box at the end of this video, you can check out the Michael J. Fox documentary review I did as well for his movie Still, which that to me should definitely be on the short list. I didn't grade it as high as some of these others, but everyone has been talking about that movie. So I think that is probably the best candidate in my mind for a celebrity doc on the short list for the Academy Awards. We'll see. They'll announce those in a few weeks. But anyway, thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. We'll see you next time. Bye.